So I moved the advent calendars from the container. I moved the fiber advent calendar rather from the container I had it in. Now that we've got more of our holiday decorations out, there's just not as much room on my mantle. So I put them together. Let's see if I scoot that back there. Yeah, that looks better. So every year, around about Thanksgiving time, I get the urge to reread Anne of Green Gables. It puts me kind of in the Thanksgiving-y mood. I just have a feeling that this is the Shetland. It's probably the Corriedale, though. Who knows? And that leads me to reading a lot of her other books, which usually means that I get to Rilla of Ingleside sometime in Christmas. And every time, the whole time I'm reading it, I'm thinking, why am I reading this book? It's so depressing. And if you're not familiar, it is Anne's children, and it is right before and during the outbreak of World War I. And somehow, a global battle that I know takes place with children who aren't real, of course, but seem real, is more heart-wrenching than a story about a fictional war, because these characters are standing in for real people who really did fight a real world war. And the women who are staying home and minding the home front are standing in for the women who really did those things and lived with rations and lived in fear of the telegram and the postman. And so every time I read it, I'm like, why am I reading this? I'm crying, but it really is well done, and I always go back to reading it, no matter how many times I set it down in tears, saying I really should stop reading this. So if I sound a little snuffly, it's Rilla's fault, or Lucy Maud Montgomery's fault. I really like this color. It is darker, significantly darker than it appears in the shot. All right, let's look at teas. We did that one last. No, we did this one last. So let's go here. That's a cute little packaging. All of the ones from this particular lady are wrapped up in these brown paper and tied with strings. I just love it. Puka. Chamomile, vanilla, and manuka honey. I have never had a puka tea. I hope I like this one. It sounds pretty good, but I'm not a big fan of licorice, so it's iffy, which is why I've never had a puka tea, because they put licorice in everything. But hopefully it will be good and I will like it. That is a little closer to the color of the skein. Working on a present, and I took all of the old candle wax in all of my candles and I melted it down in some water and let it reharden, and I got this big disc. It's like ½ an inch thick. I kind of thought I was going to get just a little bit of wax, but I have 6 clean candle holders and a whole bunch of leftover wax. So it's time to remelt this along with another disc from earlier, and then I will get moving on the firelighter project that I am hopefully going to have finished today. Well, I guess that answers my question about whether or not I can reuse this next year. Pinot Grigio Blush. From Italy. a lot of these say with cheese, and I am absolutely craving cheese all this month. I think I'm blaming the wine. I was just working on editing Wednesday's Vlogmas, and I realized that I talked about the fire lighting project, but it really didn't make any sense. And I never got back to it. So I am hopping on from Friday to clarify that. At least I hope I'm going to clarify it. So I had a bunch of candle holders that for whatever reason the candle was no longer capable of either being lit or keeping a flame like this. This is an extreme example, but like this, and I've already got one going again. My studio is in the basement, and I tend to keep a light going, a candle light going for hygge purposes, and also because I just think it makes the room warmer and smells pleasant. So what I did with those candle holders, and most of them were glass, not like the plastic I just showed you, was tucked them into this pan with some very hot water. And I just ran it at low for a while until it heated up the wax enough that I could get it out of the glass candle holders, and then I removed all the glass candle holders. I let it continue to heat in the water until every bit of it had melted down, and I stirred it from time to time so that any bits of wet wick or smudgy sooty bits, or if you do the tissue paper transfer onto a candle, it does tend to leave little pieces of the tissue paper as it burns down into the wax. So there was some of that. And then when that was all thoroughly melted and stirred up, I set it out on the back porch so that it would firm up, and the wax floated all to the top and made that disc. I took it out of the pan and I scraped all the smudgy bits off the bottom. This is basically the same thing I would do if I were rendering fat, which I do a fair amount of, both for reclaiming fat for cooking purposes and also for soap making. Generally the stuff that goes to my soap is the stuff that my cat gets nibble on at some point in the process. And I don't want to eat something my cat has nibbled on. One time it was because a mouse nibbled on it. I put it out on the porch to cool and forgot about it, and I came out the next day and half the fat was gone. So I cooked that a lot before I turned it into soap. So the fire lighting project, I am putting together some baskets for various family members of just random things that I think that they're going to use, and some of them watch this, so I'm not going to tell you everything that's going in the basket. But one of the things that's going in the basket, most of them are things that I am making myself for them. There may be some other things in there too. One of the things was these little fire lighters, and not everyone who gets a basket is getting the same thing. But I was watching somebody, completely escapes me, but she said that she took her used tea bags and dunked them in wax a couple of times to get a good coat, and then used them to start her fire. And I thought that was clever. And then a few days later I saw Northern Heart talking about going out and collecting pine cones and dipping those in wax to be a fire starter. I don't have a lot of pine cones on this property, but I do have plenty of tea bags. So I have a giant bag of tea bag fire starters. So that project is not quite done. There was one that I think I need a second coat on. I just didn't get as much wax, and I'm continuing to generate tea bags. So, and after I was all done, I don't know if I can pop it out here. After I was all done, I still have a disc about that thick. Now I did have a little bit more wax than I showed you the first time, but that's what's left, and it just pops out pretty clean. I'll have to work at this, but this is the pan I use for candle making and for soap making, and apparently for tea lighting or fire lighting. So there is where I am at with that, and that is the explanation of that. So I hope that's a little bit more clear and makes more sense than what I said the first time.